السلام الوطني المصري. سلام الروتري الدولي.
Family, I'm delighted to be with you. My name is Jacqueline Wilson, the president of Rotary E-Club of EG International, District 2451, Egypt. Our club is the first E-Club in our district, which concern about taking prominent Egyptians all over the world to do good, not all to their community, but the whole world as well. Our club was recently chartered in 4th of February this year, and we received the chartering certificate since the 7th of March this year from the hand of Rotary International past president Shekhar Mehta. We are only 9 months old till now, so we are baby club. I am super excited to have you with us today and excited about our distinguished speakers from the Rotary International. Rotary International President nominee Stephanie Aurchic and aide to Rotary International President 2024 and 2025, PDG and our mentor and our friend Tom Gump. In the beginning, I would like to welcome the presence of our PDG Hamada Zahran and our PDG Asim Abdelrazak, District Governor, incoming District Governor Ayman Nazi, and District Governor Dominique Sharif Adib. I welcome all club presidents and all Rotarians around the world. Definitely, we have two amazing guests today. Yes, two distinguished speakers. And when I say amazing, I mean it. They both action takers who always deliver proof that Rotary can make a difference in all communities. They believe that the distance between your clubs and the desired or dream clubs is the amount of action you can take to transform the club's entire culture. So today they will share their magic top tips to stay on top of your game. Ladies and gentlemen, Rotarians all over the world, let me acknowledge the presence of Rotary International President nominee Stephanie Aurchic and our PDG Tom Gump. Let us begin with, before the interesting talk of you, let us begin with a small video about our baby club. Yeah. so much. Now to your rich biography, dear our guest, Tom, please introduce ourselves to the audience. Yeah.
Yes. Well, my name is Tom Gump, and I am so honored to be here with all of you. I can't believe how much you've been able to accomplish in the last 9 months, and you have such stellar membership around the world. And when we talk about club formation around the world, we often mention your club as an example, a shining example of what can be accomplished. And it's not only the formation of your club, but what you have done to make the world a better place over the last months. We are just so happy to have had a small part in all of that. And if you'd like me to, I can introduce RIPN Steph.
You're muted, Tom.
I would ask everyone if they can mute themselves so I can introduce our Rotary International President nominee. Thank you so much. So it is truly my honor to be able to introduce Rotary International President nominee Stephanie Aurchic. Dr. Aurchic is a member of the Rotary Club of McMurray, Pennsylvania, USA, and she will serve as our president of Rotary International in the Rotary year 24-25. She has served Rotary tremendously in the past as an RI director, and as a director, she was chair of the board's executive committee. She's also been a foundation trustee for the Rotary Foundation, and she was chair of the Rotary Strategic Planning Committee and the Rotary International Foundation Centennial Celebration Committee. She was a member of the RI Convention Committee for Atlanta, and she was a Rotary Leadership Training Institute moderator. She's been an International Assembly training leader. She was also a regional foundation coordinator. She's been a president's representative, a district governor, and a district delegate and member at large for 3 councils on legislation, and has been a member of various Rotary International committees on both the district and zone level and, of course, in her club. She's been a Rotarian since 1991 and has participated in a variety of international service projects, including multiple national immunization days in India and Nigeria. And in Vietnam, she helped with the building of an elementary school. In the Dominican Republic, she helped install water infiltration systems so that we can help the population have water and reduce the mortality rate in infants. She mentors Rotarians in the Ukraine. She secured mammography equipment and a biopsy unit for a hospital in Poland, and was the district-wide Rotary Foundation matching grant that Stephanie coordinated with the Club of Krakow. In the Rotary Club of Krakow, they noted her in a book that they wrote that she's one of the agents helping the rebirth of Rotary in post-communist Poland, which is a high acclaim. Currently, Stephanie is helping to partner clubs together in the US, different Rotary clubs, so that she can have an impact in Kosovo and Albania in humanitarian and education services there. Stephanie's professional background is in higher education, like many of you here today, in consulting, and also in the entertainment industry. She has received her doctorate degree in leadership studies from the Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and has been recognized and awarded by the Rotary Foundation and numerous community and international organizations. And that is the official bio that we usually give. But since you are friends, I'd like to also let you know that Stephanie is just a great person. I remember being at her installation when she just finished being a director of Rotary International, and the outpouring of support that she got from her zones 33 and 34 were like I've never seen before. She's just a very good person. So what we'd like to talk to you here about today is something that's very important to Rotary, And that's creating a club culture that is welcoming and inclusive. So Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit about what our research has shown as to what culture actually is?
Well, I'm happy to, Tom, but before I do that, let me say good evening to my family of Rotary and President Jacqueline. Thank you so much for inviting Tom and I to be a part of your special session this evening. And I want to thank each and every one of you for giving up your evening to be with us. What Tom and I are talking about today is club culture. And even though your club is new, there are some important lessons that we want to share with you, because ultimately the whole purpose of our presentation this evening is to get you to think about what does it feel like when people log on to your meetings or join you at your events, whether they're prospective members or new members. So culture, put very simply, is simply the unwritten rule book that determines the way we do things around here. It's really a compilation of all the beliefs and attitudes of your club members. So if things are going smoothly in your club, if you're seeing that there's a lot of growth and diversity, even though you're 9 months old, if your foundation giving is good, if you're doing projects in all the areas of focus, and I know you're doing so much already, your club's culture is a source of strength. However, if some of those things begin to decline, it may mean that something has happened to the culture and that perhaps a shift in culture is required. And sometimes, you know, a shift in culture means that we're changing, and change is always met with resistance because people are afraid of what they can't understand or what they can't predict. So let's do an exercise. You'll see on the screen that there is a young woman with her arms crossed. So I'd like you to do that now. Cross your arms. So when some of you did that, you put your left arm over your right arm, and some of you put your right arm over your left arm. So whatever you did, switch it and do the opposite. Tom, how did that feel when I asked you to change?
It actually made me feel uncomfortable, like when my wife makes me take yoga.
Well, okay, Tom, if it's so uncomfortable, then why are we suggesting to Rotary clubs that from time to time they should investigate and determine that they should change something?
Well, it's interesting, Stephanie. Rotary International is really good about doing assessments and surveys. And they did 3 major ones worldwide last year. And what it showed was the #1 reason people are leaving their Rotary club, and they're not leaving Rotary International, they're leaving a club, is because they don't feel comfortable with the culture or the environment of the club.
So the way to determine what your culture is and whether or not it's functioning well is to do an assessment. So your club is new and you've only been in existence for 9 months. So the recommendation would be that after you hit the 1-year mark, this would be a great thing for you to do. Formally investigate how your club is doing. You know, in the United States in the 70s, we had a mayor in the city of New York. His name was Ed Koch. And he was so famous for walking around and saying, "How am I doing?" He would stand on the street corner and say, "How am I doing?" He'd go down into the subway and say, "How am I doing?" It was his way of getting instant assessment about his performance as the mayor of New York. And it's important for us to do assessments because it gives us a snapshot of what's happening in our club. And when you do an assessment, you'll find out one of 3 things. You'll either find out that, hey, the culture is pretty good here. The way we're doing things is working and we are attractive and we're retaining members. Or you may find out that the culture maybe has a little bit room for improvement. Maybe some things need to shift a little. Or the third thing you may find out is that absolutely there is no hope for making any kind of shift in this club. So in order to do that effectively, you really need to have a process. Tom, can you tell us a little bit about the tools that Rotary has in place to help clubs with this?
Absolutely. You know, the major tool that we have is actually a survey. And we have 6 different type of assessment tools. But if we use them properly, they'll actually tell us if we need to make a change, how to make the change, and most importantly, why we need to make a change. So if you go to Rotary International and you go to My Rotary and you just type in health check, it'll give you a survey. Also, there's a club assessment. You know, different tools are used at different times, you know, and from different audiences. So if we want to poll the board, we can do that. If we want to poll the members, we can do that. But the most important thing is that we're asking them if they like what's going on at the club. Let's face it, Rotary is a business like any other business, and we're delivering a product, and that product is the club experience. So we want to know if the individuals who are club members like that experience. If we are promising something when new members are coming in, we want to deliver what we promised. So it doesn't have to be complicated. If you go and Google up health check and you don't like the way it is sounding, you can change the survey to fit your needs. And if you have a small club with only 20 people, you can just pick up the phone and call people and ask them, do they like where we meet? Do you like how we meet? Do you like our socials? Do you like our service projects? But it's funny because when we ask districts and zones and clubs if they do surveys, a surprising number, very, very small number actually do surveys. And when we ask when they conduct those surveys, most of them tell us that they conduct them while people are leaving. Well, respectfully submitted, that might not be the best time to do a survey. Because even if we did a survey when someone's leaving, we can't make a change in order to keep that person. And let's face it, Rotarians are nice people. And if we ask them the real reason they're leaving, they might not tell us. So it's interesting because our current international Rotary president, Jennifer Jones, is in the process of making an entrance survey. It will be a 7 type of assessment tool. So we could ask people when they come in, what do you want out of your experience as Rotarian? And what's so funny is when you drill down, first of all, you ask how many people are satisfied, very satisfied, okay, or are they dissatisfied or very dissatisfied? But only about 5% of our folks are either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. But when you ask those members why they're dissatisfied, it's surprising how little the change would need to be made in order to make them happy. Some people just don't want to go to an early morning meeting. Some people just don't want to meet at a hotel. So if you're in a larger club and you have 8 or so members who don't want to meet in the morning like the rest of the club, you can start a satellite club. So there's all kinds of things you can do, but the most important thing is to find out what your members want. And you know, when you find that out, you have to do it every once in a while because your club is changing. You have members coming in, you have members coming out. So the culture is changing all the time. So Rotary recommends you do a survey at least once a year. So Stephanie, what happens when we do the survey and find out what our members want changed?
So if you've done your club assessment, and if it's pretty clear that your club needs to shift a little bit, to transform itself, to do some things a little bit differently, what happens is something that happens to us in other life situations. It's called fight or flight. So what that means is, you know, we've noticed a problem, we've did an assessment, and so now there's this sense of alarm or fear or panic. Oh my gosh, what if we keep on this path? What's going to happen to this club? What happens if my club goes away? And so we're faced with the choice. Do we fight to stay in our club and introduce strategies and techniques that will help move the needle? Or do we take off, which is where the flight comes in? Take off means we look for other opportunities. We either look for a different club or we look to create a new club. So whichever is a better choice really depends on your position in the club. But I want to step just back first and talk about something that happens even before this. It's the first moment when we actually become aware that our club is not at its best. And this is even before you do an assessment. You do this as a member. And that moment is called the freeze. in that time, whether it takes seconds or hours or even years, you notice that there's a problem and you see that it's not gone away. And you come to terms with the fact that, hey, something has to change. We have to solve this issue. So freeze means that you notice the problem and then you decide quickly, how are you going to deal with it? Will you fight or will you flee? And the action that you take really is a product of deliberate thinking. So I want to share a story with you here. I am in my third Rotary Club. My first Rotary Club of California, PA, in the USA, I was in that club for 10 years and it was a great club. It functioned well and, we were active and participated in a lot of Rotary programs. But then I had a job shift, a job change. And so I needed to move to a different club. So in that second club, I got to the freeze moment. And it took a couple of years where I realized this club isn't going anywhere. It's not doing anything. They had no international service. They had very little, if any, community service. They weren't engaged in the fight to eradicate polio. They just were not active. So by this time, I was already a past district governor. So try as I might, I suggested things and I tried things and I tried to move the needle, but it just wouldn't budge. So I made the deliberate choice to flee that club. I left it and I joined a third club. The club I'm in now is very active, 55 members. We have a satellite group. We do lots of community service and plenty of things internationally. My problem in my second club was that I tried to do it myself. When you try to institute change as a sole person, as the sole member, that's a recipe for failure because it really, really will not work. It's just too hard. You need to find what Tom and I like to call spark plugs, other members in your club who are willing to say, that does sound like a good idea. Maybe we should try this. So Tom, let's talk about that third thing that happens. If you get to the point where you look at your club and you decide there's no help, no hope here for this club, and you decide you need to jump ship, talk about what it means.
Absolutely, Stephanie, I'd be happy to. It's interesting when Stephanie and I speak around the world, different districts are different and different clubs are different. We could be speaking in Thailand and they tell us that they so much respect their elders that it's hard to make change in a club. So what they do, they want to do. There's other countries in the world, let's say Vietnam, who they want to change, and they're okay with making changes in their club. Well, there's a saying that we use often that is, sometimes it's easier to give birth than to raise the dead. So what are we talking about? We're talking about exactly what you did. We're talking about, starting a new club as opposed to making changes to an old club. So of course, our traditional clubs, which Stephanie often calls legacy clubs, they are the backbone of Rotary. They've been around for a long time. I'm part of a traditional legacy club and I would never leave it. But what we realize is, if you go back about 25 years to 1996, the average club size at that point was 60. Today, the average club size is 30. Yet we're still approximately the same number of Rotarians, if you include our Rotaractors, 1.4. Well, why is that? It's because we added new clubs. And the benefit of adding a new club, like adding your club, is we have its own culture. You have your culture that you don't have to change because it's a new culture and you like it. So what are the advantages of a new club? Well, there's a few. It grows Rotary quickly. In our district, and my district governor, Lloyd Campbell, is actually on the phone today. In our district, when I was district governor, we started a club called the Rotary Club of Network for Empowering Women. We added 50 members at one time. It would take us a long time to add 50 members to our district. So new clubs, because you have to start with 20, you add them in chunks. And it's interesting, when you add people in groups, the group feels everyone feels like they belong because they were part of that organization of that entity. So when you bring in an individual that's into a club, maybe she or he may not feel like they belong because they didn't have a say in how that culture was built. Also, new clubs retain members longer. You know, Stephanie and I were privy to some numbers from last year when we were at our last in-person Rotary International Membership Growth Committee. And what we found out is that we had 169,000 people come in last year, but 165,000 left. So the good news is we had a net increase of 4,000 approximately. But what we found out is that 19,000 of those people left within their first year. They joined Rotary last year and they left last year. And if you take that out 3 years, 52% of our Rotarians leave within the first 3 years. Now, why is that? Well, we know it's because they don't feel comfortable in the club that they're in, and they don't know about what larger Rotary has to offer. You know, a friend invited them to a club, and they might not know that that town or that city has another club. So they leave. But what happens in our new clubs is so many of them, like yours, has a meaning and purpose because they're a cause-based club. So a club that's around a cause, like let's say saving the environment. And because people have that passion for the cause, you know, they stay because their speakers are about that cause, their service projects are about that cause. And then after they've been there for a year to 3 years, then they're like the rest of us. They have those lifelong friendships with their fellow Rotarians. And once they have those relationships, they don't live. So Dr. Jacqueline, can we mute everyone? Thank you. Also, the new clubs have more diversity in them. You know, the studies show that our clubs are better when we have diversity. We have better thought processes. We're better able to solve solutions. And we attract members because they are diverse. It's interesting because during my year as governor, we added 3 clubs that had a significant amount of female members and members of underrepresented classes. It was an environmental club, which had over 50% females. The one that I just recently stated, Network for Empowering Women, almost 70% of those members were female. And then our End Human Trafficking Club, it had close to 60% female members. So it's interesting because these new clubs, if you go on a screen in a virtual meeting of them, you'll realize they're more diverse than our traditional clubs because that's what people want nowadays. They want to be a part of a diverse club. So because it's a stronger, better club. Also, these new clubs reach out into our communities in a way that we just haven't done with our traditional clubs. Our traditional clubs, most people belong to them because they either work or live within a 10-minute drive of where, you know, they spend most of their time. But these new clubs are different. When we started the first ever club to serve veterans, what we found out is people were driving over 2 hours to go to their bloodletting drives or their service projects or their socials. And when we started the first ever club to end human trafficking, you know, 2 weeks after we started, we were inducting a new member that was actually from Ankara, Turkey. And about 20 minutes after that meeting, I received an email from the then sitting Rotary International president, letting me know that that was his sister we just inducted. And he had been trying to get her into Rotary for 40 years, 4 decades. But we just didn't have a club that fit her needs. She wanted to focus on ending human trafficking, or where we say in most parts of the world, we call it slavery, modern slavery. And she taught school during the day, so she could only get on at night. So the virtual platform fit like this club does for many of you. And also these new clubs give us an opportunity to partner with other organizations. Lloyd, who's on this call today, he helped our district start a club that serves people with autism and their families. We partnered up with a local community organization, did the same thing, and we're able to start right away. We did the same thing with an environmental club for young people. We went to SRAG, the Environmental Rotary Sustainability Action Group. And as an action group, you advise on things like how to fund projects or how to do projects, but you actually don't get grants and you actually don't do projects. So they gave a list of the younger folks who wanted to do that advisory role, but also wanted to start their own club so that they could actually plant those trees, as opposing to just talking to people about how to do it. So Stephanie, when we're about to make a change or start a new club, it's important to get the word out. So how do we get buy-in from our members to make either the change or a new club?
Yes, Tom has been talking about creating new clubs or innovative clubs like yours. Yours is a very innovative club. And, you know, you don't have to change culture initially because you created it. When you got together in February and were chartered, you know, you created the environment in which you were working. But eventually, my hope and your hope is going to be that you're going to become a legacy club, meaning you're going to be around for a while. So there are going to be people in and out. And so one of the things that's important for us to understand is as people move in and out and we look at things that might have to transform, it's important that we understand how to get buy-in from members. Buy-in is an important element because buy-in helps people understand their role in what's happening. You know, we have a saying in the United States that people don't wash rental cars, and they don't because they don't own them. So to involve members and give them some ownership, the absolutely simple thing to do is to ask for help or ask for their opinion. Now, not every decision or every problem is going to require involving all the members, but when you do ask them for opinion, whether it's just getting facts or getting suggestions or simply telling you what they think, that's crucial for gaining buy-in. Because when you listen to your members, it may not change the ultimate outcome that you have in mind, but it lets the members know that they will be heard and that they are part of the process and the club experience. Tom and I call these people that we've mentioned before spark plugs, the ones that are attuned to what change or strategy you have in mind. Now, how do you find them? Well, I think you know this already. These are the people in your club who have the energy and the creativity, and they always want to contribute, and they're optimistic. They're not afraid to try things. You know, they will never say, "Oh my goodness, we've always done it this way." You know, they're really, really not afraid to try things. Spark plugs understand that you perfect as you go, but the people who are naysayers want everything to be perfect before they try anything. And if you wait for that, it's never going to happen. So Tom, now that we've identified, you know, where our club may be because we've assessed it and we've looked around and we see that there are some things we want to change and we know that there are some members who feel the same way and want to do that. Can you share with us Rotary's model for change?
Absolutely. And, you know, this is a question we get asked a lot. When Stephanie and I go to president-elect training seminars in various places around the world, there's always a few things that concern our president-elects. They are, of course, concerned about membership. They're concerned about public speaking, but they're also concerned about how do you make change without alienating others who don't want to change, which was a sentiment that was expressed today when we were right before we started this program. So it's interesting, a few years back, we were at a president-elect training seminar, and we asked the question, what change are you going to make? So we wanted the president-elects to be thinking about the change, so when they are presidents, they can make that change. And there was a gentleman there named Troy, and I always refer to him as Troy the pie guy, because I can't remember his last name. But the change that Troy stood up in front of a whole room of presidents from 5 different districts, he said he wanted pie at dessert, which caused a lot of chuckles. But it's interesting because when they instituted that change, a funny thing happened when we ran into him a few years later. He said that it created a culture within his club that it was okay to change things. So they started changing other things, at first small, but then larger. So how do we do that? Well, as Stephanie says, we start with the assessment, which we've been talking about that. That's when we try to find out, is there a willingness in the club to change? And what is the desired outcome that they want to reach? Well, after we come up with that assessment, we actually design the change. And during that, we look at what is the picture we're going to paint that we can present to people to say, you want to make a change because our club will reach this outcome that you want. Maybe it's more members. Maybe it's more giving to the Rotary Foundation. Maybe it's more hands to do service projects. But during the design phase, it'll tell us what tools we need. You know, during COVID, we had to make a change because we had to go virtual because we weren't allowed to meet in person. You know, a tool you would need might be equipment. Maybe it'd be a sound synthesizer or an OWL camera. Those are the things that you think about when you're going to design, because you need to figure out, it's a change that costs money. What are we going to have to do to make the change? Then we start building the change. And what's great, if you look at that wheel in the upper left-hand corner, it is a wheel, but it doesn't have to keep going straight and keep going around in that circle. If you're building it and you create a communications plan, that's the most important thing when you're building it. If it seems like you're not getting the buy-in that you want, you could back up and go backwards in the circle for a little bit, communicate more to different people, and then move forward. And what you're going to see when we get back to the top after we make that change, it might be good to do another survey to find out if there's other changes that need to be made. But then we implement. The most important thing about implementation is taking care and caring for the people who are resistant to change. You know, Stephanie loves to tell the story about a man named Byron in one of her clubs. And Byron was the treasurer for 34 years. 34 years he was a treasurer. Well, when you're implementing a change, sometimes it's important to move people around. And maybe it's time to go to Byron or the Byron in your club. I know you've been around for 9 months, so you don't have that, but always be thinking about this. You know, maybe Byron could be the one who puts together the manual for the next treasurer to come in. Or maybe Byron, instead of being treasurer, could help in another capacity, maybe be head of the gala or head of the golf tournament or whatever project you need him to do. But we just want to be thoughtful to the people who are resistant to change because they come along. I remember when I was first president of my club, I wanted to meet with people to make sure that I was going to do what they wanted me to do as president. And we had a gentleman who was the grumpiest person in our club. And it turns out that the only reason he was grumpy is because he wanted to talk about his business, was that of being a realtor. And years ago, they stopped talking about people's professions. So at my first meeting, I had him talk, and then he helped us be an agent for change for other changes. So then after we implement, the next phase is sustain. You remember Troy, the pie guy, when he was president, he brought in that pie for dessert, but he didn't want that pie to go away when the next person became president. So it's very important to, and most club does happen, and most changes in the club, and let's face it, Rotary happens at the club level. It doesn't happen on the 18th floor of Evanston where Stephanie has her office and I have a little desk in her office. It doesn't happen there. Sure, we help with things, but it happens at the club level. So when you're making that change and you're a club president, involve the president-elect. If you have one, involve the president nominee. I know President-to-be Aurchic is working with our current president and the president-elect to make sure there's continuity in the major things that Rotary does. Our number one program is eradicating polio. It would just be awful if we just stopped that when Stephanie became president. So Stephanie's working hard with President-elect Gordon and President Jennifer to make sure there's continuity there. We have to do that at the district level. We have to do that in the club level if you want those changes to stay. So Stephanie, we made a change, and before we do another survey and make the second change, we have to communicate that change. Can you tell us how to do that?
Well, actually, yes. You know, there are two audiences that really need to hear the message about your club culture. And one is an internal audience. And this is where you're going to speak to members about what's happening. And this helps your retention. Keep in mind, we mentioned it before, that you can't convert all members all at once. You really need to start small. success breeds success. Keep thinking about Troy the Pie Guy, something very simple, but it changed the culture in the club for that group of members to consider trying different things. And always, make your members feel like they're part of the process. We talked about it before. It's called buy-in. It helps make them feel valued and can motivate them to adapt a new change gracefully. And you always want to maintain a few old traditions. That might be the way you do social events. It may be special recognitions. It could be the service related to the things that you do. And you don't want to eradicate old club values all at once and then expect members to jump on board. So these are things that will help with your internal marketing. External marketing is a little bit different. And here I like to tell a little bit about a success model that is very popular. And it's another acronym, PIE. And so it's different from Troy the Pie Guy. This is PIE, the success model. So the first P for in the model stands for performance. Now let's face it, Rotary clubs do amazing things. I watched your video and I looked at all the things you were doing for nursing education, for children with disabilities, for environment. I mean, you really are using the talents and interests of your club members in a remarkable way. So there's no doubt that your performance on the things you do is amazing. That's only 10% of success. The second I stands for image. And you may know this, that, several years ago, Rotary embarked on a very big project to rebrand everything in Rotary. So our colors are consistent, our logos are consistent, the messaging that we share with the world, when anybody encounters Rotary information, it is consistent. But that's only 30% of success. So that means that 60% of our success as an organization comes from the last letter, and that's E, and it stands for exposure. And that's all the things that we do outside to market what our club is doing. It could be local media. It certainly is social media. It's being active. It's looking for partnerships. Are there other organizations and companies in your area who share the same values that we have as Rotary? Fellowship, leadership, integrity, diversity, and service? Or are there other companies that share your interest in environment or in disabilities or in healthcare? So find places where you can partner with other organizations to deliver messages in your communities. And that helps with getting that overall success. The whole concept about doing the things that Tom and I have shared today is that we want you to think about making your club simply irresistible. For so long we've had membership challenges, but they really are triggered by a problem. And the problem is our product. Our product is our club experience. And far too often, we don't pay enough attention to that experience. And then we end up with people leaving. Like Tom said, 169,000 came in, but 164,000 left. It takes so much effort to get a member. You all know that. You're all business people. How long does it take you to get a client or a customer or a patient? And then, for them to leave is disastrous, because then you have to start all over. It makes so much sense to nurture them, to care for them, and to keep them in our clubs, keep them in the fold. So our message too is, think about the culture in your club and work to make it simply irresistible so that it becomes attractive to other people who may want to join you, and it becomes a source of retention to help keep the members that you have. So Tom, over to you for final comments.
Yes. Well, Steph, a lot of people on our call today are in the healthcare field. So I love the analogy that you talk about with membership when it comes to a symptom. Could you tell us about that?
Well, the symptom, as I mentioned, really means, that our club experience gets a little bit sick, if you will. And people who are in our clubs are wondering, why am I here? You know, we talk a lot in Rotary about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but you also need to talk about belonging. You know, DEI are things that other people do. You know, a club board may elect to look for other members, and you know, may create ways to become inclusive. But when we talk about belonging, that's an internal feeling. That's a feeling that we have ourselves, and it's what we say to ourselves: I belong here. This is what makes me feel good. This is where I'm getting my psychic income. So when I talk about symptomatic, that's what I'm meaning, that our club experience has to get really strong and irresistible so that people want to stay and they feel the belonging in that club. Or on the outside, they look at us and say, that looks like a great group of people who are doing such great things in community service. I want to belong to that group.
Well, Dr. Aurchic, this is the best part of our presentation because it's our favorite part, because we are now going to take questions. We want everyone to make sure that they leave with the knowledge they wanted to have today. So please just shout them out. We'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. Our guests, our great guests, thank you for accepting our invitation. Rotary International President nominee, and we are looking forward to working with you during your upcoming governance 2024-2025. Thanks for Dr. Stephanie Clinic and for the Rotary clubs today with great consultant Tom Gump. And now I leave the question and answers to be moderated by my colleagues, Professor Dr. Salah Hassan and Dr. Ahmed Al-Siragi. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
All right.
Dr.
Yeah,
Salah.
I would like to thank you so much. This is very impressive presentation. You took us through an amazing journey from talking about organizational, cultural, and organizational change, and then all the way, and this is the sweet spot in my opinion, talking about marketing your club, and I'm gonna wear my marketing hat right now and commend you. You are really marketing experts. You talked about internal marketing, external marketing, and tying that to organizational culture, and then wrapping it up with image and branding. Wow, what a wow presentation. I would like to commend both of you, and very seamless. You know, this is probably one of the best duetto type of presentations. I'm sure Tom, Stephanie, you have done this before, and hats off to you. You have done a fantastic job, and I fully agree with you. And I like they say, culture is not the game. Culture is what the game is all about. You know, so the name of the game is managing your culture, organizational culture, very effectively and very efficiently, and being on top of it. And I loved your 5D change model, from assessment to design to you know, building to implementation and sustaining again that performance over time. Amazing, you know, truly a nice model for us to follow as we grow our club. And also I loved your, that was your sweet treat at the end, your pie model in marketing here, you know, performance, image, and exposure right on target. I would like to commend you on that. And I really would like to sum it up in 3 factors. And I oftentimes talk about these 3 factors. First, I call it awareness, and you have already touched on that. Second is engagement. It is about how you engage the membership. In every example you shared, you know, where members have exited the organization is to lack of perceived role, you know, for me to be engaged with the organization. So how to make that transition seamless, and what I call it the golden triangle: awareness, engagement, and then advocacy. How can you turn engaged members into advocates in order to recruit future members, in order to enhance the image and sustain the image and so forth. So this is my brief comments. Thank you so much. Hats off. Fantastic presentation. And I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. Thank you for inviting us, and well said, Dr. Hassan. I agree with all your comments. Well
Thank
said.
you. Thank you.
If you allow me to go second, Dr. Jacqueline, thank you very much for our presenters today. I think it has been very insightful, very impressive. As Dr. Salah mentioned, I will not take a lot of the time to allow other colleagues to throw their questions. I've been taking a lot of notes, but if I can ask our speakers as part of my reflections and also part of my question to you both. Yeah, when you started, my own kind of understanding or perspective about this is when you started about the survey, talking about survey assessment, and then setting a strategy, I started saying that we have here what we call normally that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So can you elaborate more on this idea of spark plugs, change agent, start with a small, give this sense of ownership and sense of belongings, and make people feel more valued and voice heard as well. So it's a more of a relation-oriented kind of empathy leadership within. So if you have any examples to share with us, yeah, I like this idea of this spark plugs and give people ownership and get them involved in projects.
Well, I do have an example that I can share with you. You heard when Tom introduced me that at one point I was asked to chair the Joint Committee for Strategic Planning. So I was the very first chair of that committee that worked for both Rotary as well as for the Rotary Foundation. And when the committee got together, the very first thing we did was look at each other and say, we're not going to write a single word of this strategic plan. And we did not. Instead, we reached out to the Rotary world. We did rounds of surveying, then we did rounds of focus group study, then we did rounds of in-depth interviewing, and we talked to everybody. We talked to Rotarians, non-Rotarians, former Rotarians, interactors, Rotaractors, Rilarians, anybody for whom we had contact information. And we asked them questions about the future of Rotary. And then we collected all of that information, and our job then became to do a pattern analysis and to see what was bubbling up. Now, clearly, we talked to almost 1 million people, and we couldn't use 1 million different answers in what we were looking at, but the fact that we reached out to people and we asked people for their opinion is what gave people that sense of, oh, Rotary is really listening to me. Okay, I understand this. And as you know, our strategic plan, once we identified the priorities from all of that research and we launched it, it was called the action plan. And the action plan has been very well received because so many Rotarians around the world and others who have a connection to Rotary felt that they had an opportunity to be part of that process. So that's what buy-in really means.
I love that. Exactly.
That's brilliant. If we can go around, I can see that Soha has raised her hand for a question. So Soha, if you want to go second. Tom, do you have any comments on that? If you want to elaborate that, or we can move to the other question.
You know, Dr. Aurchic is right. One thing I would keep in mind, and I don't mean to oversimplify this, but people stay in a club because they feel like they belong. If there's ever an individual that you bring in that's making people feel like they don't belong, it's very tempting, especially as a president, not to get rid of someone who's making other people feel uncomfortable. But our experience has been, it's better to lose an individual who's making others feel uncomfortable than trying to keep that individual. So have the courage, if someone doesn't fit in with this wonderful group, to ask them to leave. It'll save you a lot of hardship in the long run. Just practical advice. Thank you.
Yeah. So sometimes you need to take hard and tough decisions. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So Soha, can we go next for Soha's question, please?
It's easier to get in. I really
Yes.
like.
I just wanted to comment on the importance of time when change should be done. Many persons might think that it's fine while we are going on and doing everything, and nobody is, disagreeing about anything. But many times I try to find that many members are very dissatisfied. So, crucial here about when to decide when change is needed, as a matter of fact. So I think that once there is a sign that there is dissatisfaction or alienation, I think that it should be done as quickly as they can. Time, as a matter of fact, is really very, very important.
Well, I was going to ask you, I have a.
Thank you, Soha.
Some of that, Suha, depends on how quickly you can identify the spark plugs in your club to help move that change. Because remember, you don't want to simply try to do it yourself because it won't go anywhere. You know, I was in my second club. There I was a past district governor, like many of you. You know, I had years of Rotary experience, yet when I suggested something, most of the members simply glazed over. So my failure was that I didn't find other people in the club who felt the same way. So some of that will depend on how quickly you can find others. And then, you know, as quickly as you can find them, then you're better able to go ahead and suggest that transformation.
Definitely. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I
We'll
totally
go second to Mr. Amr Ramadan. If yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks, Stephanie and Tom, for your very interesting presentations. And I guess this is a very newly established club, as President Jacqueline mentioned at the beginning. And I think there is a lot that we need to know, especially for those of us who haven't been in previous clubs. I see that the fight or flight, we're not there yet. We're just trying to see what we can do before exiting the club. So I think that you went a little bit far. I don't see it as a negative message to us as a new club, how to exit the club. And as you put it, Tom, this group has a large number of doctoral PhD holders. And I have to say it's a very homogeneous group as well. I remember our first meetings where we had to start thinking about what exactly should we target as a beginning project. And the expertise of the professors around the globe has been very useful in identifying some areas and also bringing some, I would say, fruitful ideas to start with. Probably what I don't want to leave this meeting before getting your advice on newly established clubs, because both of you, Tom and Stephanie, have helped in establishing new clubs. I heard you saying that you have moved from one club to another. So what would be your advice for new clubs, how to start, how to bring things together, how we can work as a team? Because we are already doing that, but finding projects, finding ideas is not an easy task, especially at the beginning. Thank you.
Tom, you're the expert here, so I'm going to ask you to field that one initially.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for asking the question. You know, new clubs often suffer from the same thing that well-established clubs suffer from. And you have such a cohesive group and everything is going well. There's a temptation just to continue thinking that everything is well and not asking people for their opinions. You know, there are so many clubs that have been around for 116 years. There's actually going to be 456 clubs this year that turn 100 years old. And the temptation is, if you have 300 members, we're doing everything fine not to ask people what they think. You know, last year a club approached me and said, we have a situation, we have 50% of our members that want to do away with the four-way test, and we have 50% of our members that want to keep the four-way test. What do we do? So I would suggest to you as advice as a new club to really do those surveys, because when they did, I told them, do a survey to find out what people really think. It turns out of their club of 20, only 2 people wanted to do away with the 4-way test, but they were the 2 very loud individuals in that club. And, you know, with the help of your ambassadorial skills, you are going to be able to usher in change when it needs to be made, but just keep a pulse on what your club really wants. Because right now it's easy because you're a little bit smaller and you just started. But a year from now, if you start losing members, they're leaving for a reason. Keep doing those surveys so you know what they think. Thank you for asking the question.
Trying to unmute myself. Yeah. Thank you, Tom, for this. Mr. Hemmet Safwat, you have your raised hand.
Hey, I want to thank you very much for both Tom and Stephanie, because what you provided was an excellent guidance for a voluntary group of people cooperating. This is, in my opinion, is a very, very robust recipe. My question, is directed towards what are the experiences of similar situation to our club. Our club is, in my opinion, a bit different. Why? Because many of the members, though are originally from Egypt, they have lived quite a bit of time outside. They have acquired a lot of different experiences, whether in the US or in Europe, different experiences. Yet the goal is to try to benefit communities in Egypt. This is a fundamental point. I don't know if there are similar situations like this from former or recent or older clubs that have done something like this, because we all know that the environment where the projects are to be developed or executed, implemented, is dependent quite a bit on where the project is going to be. So there is a lot of influence on this here, and I am taking the opportunity to ask you, from your vast experience, to comment on this and give us, if possible, some pointers. Thank you.
I think that you actually are saying what is coming naturally to most Rotary clubs. Most Rotary clubs look around at their community to decide what can we make better. Because most of you are looking at Egypt, even though you've lived in other places the world, I think is fine. It's, I've worked with a club here in Pennsylvania that's an E-club, and it has half of its members in the United States and half of the members are in Kosovo. But all of the projects that they do are based in Kosovo because the members have determined that that's where the greater need is. And that's where, their expertise and their talents can be best used. So in identifying communities in Egypt that can benefit by your service and how you're going to make lasting change, I think is totally appropriate, even though many of your members may be in other places. Tom, do you have a thought on that?
I do. I really agree with everything you said. But I want this club to realize that they are unique. I mean, there's 46,000 clubs around the world, but there's no club just like this club with so much intellectual power to do so many things. I think the one thing I would say is make sure that you actually do projects, because I think that engagement, people don't join clubs to do nothing. They join clubs to serve others. So I think that you are on a tremendous start, And as long as you don't lose that focus, we're going to continue to talk about this club around the world because you are special. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Thomas, Stephanie, for this. And I think back to reflect on what Mr. Emmett mentioned. I think there is some of our members are based in Egypt, and I think the regular kind of meetings, the communication between us and them, that helps us give us this insight and understanding what the community really needs. But I totally agree with you, Tom, that this kind to have this a project kind of direction to the club that will make all members based all over the world, or those are based in Egypt, to work together to a specific target. Thank you so much. I'm very cautious of time, so we don't. I know that we still have a few minutes, but I will go. I can't see more hands. Maybe Himmet has an old hand, so this is the same from the previous question. But it's back to you, Dr. Jacqueline, if you want to wrap up and end this session. Thank you.
You have to unmute, Jacqueline. We can't hear you, Jacqueline.
Dr. Jack, you are muted.
Yeah.
We can hear you now.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you so much for this inspiring lecture, and thanks a lot for Tom. Really, I'd like to attract your attention that Egypt is a developing country, and we have prominent Egyptians all over the world. We have to get benefit from their experiences. All of them are prominent. They are chair of departments, they are businessmen, they are leaders, they are president of universities. And so by exchange of information, we can do a successful projects here in Egypt. So it's not just hands-on, it's all in mind. So if we get benefit from their thoughts, from their experiences, we can push things forward here in our country. And I think that they did all best. We succeeded up to now to do the first successful project regarding nursing advancement by the help of Dr. Arif al-Suwaifi and Dr. Tariq Hassanin. Unfortunately, Dr. Tariq is not here today to talk about how he got a permission from well-reputed university in USA. And also Dr. Arif is with us. He can give us just hint about this successful project. And we are about ending of this project. So we can invite all, invite you, Stephanie, and invite Tom to celebrate the end point of our project, and I hope it will be sustainable. And finally, I'd like to ask any person, any guest, if they have any other questions. Okay, thank you so much for being with us. Delighted to have such amazing lecture, and I hope we can meet you soon in another lecture here to spread and communicate your vision in Egypt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let us all hope the success of COP27 taking place in Egypt in few days. So we wish Egypt as an organizing country and the COP27 to achieve their goals. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and we have to invite you to visit Egypt, the touristic area.
I would love to.
You will push the community and the economic part. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you again. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you all our guests. Thank you. Have a nice day.